Hi there, my name is Deanna Byrne. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Chasing Sunsets. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that really jumped out to me after my I had gone through sort of the deepest part of my grieving process, and it was one of those pivotal moments where I started to rediscover who she was. And there was something that really stood out to me that I wrote a blog post about earlier this year. And I want to talk a little bit about that in this episode. So I've called this episode, Who is She? So during my process of deep grief, I had a hard time looking at myself. I avoided the mirror at all costs because that person that I saw in the mirror was broken and she was dark. And she reminded me so much of that internal pain that I was feeling so deeply. I would criticize her. I hated her and I didn't want to see her. And I would not let anyone close enough to even begin to see through that barrier. I had built one hell of a wall up around me during that time. During those first 2 years after my husband's sudden death, there were moments that I would feel very strong and I would find myself coming to the surface, but I always pushed her back down again. I wasn't ready to meet her or to see her. Negative self-talk was absolutely paramount in my life at that point. It was amazing how it would be a war of words within your brain of two completely different mindsets in the same brain, having dialogue with each other. One being positive, telling the other one to stop, and the other one being negative and overpowering the other one. The occasional time during the first 2 years, I would allow myself to put on makeup or put my hair up or do my hair. But those moments were very short lived, and I always reverted back to that broken, dark woman. I removed every single mirror in my house except for one that was behind my bedroom door, and I placed it low enough on the door that I couldn't see from the neck up because I didn't want to see my face. Again, negative self-talk was so paramount that if I got up and I started to try to be positive or grateful, the negative self-talk would stop, would begin. The grief talk, the what could you have done differently? How could you have prevented that? You should have known that was going to happen. You should have been able to stop it. All of those grief talk moments that were so incredibly paramount in my life and very powerful and energy sucking. I wouldn't do my hair at all. I literally wore it in a ponytail all the time. I would not style it. I would not curl it. I would do nothing to it. I would simply wear it in a clip or put it in a ponytail. And it seemed the reasoning at that time that I recognized later on was by not allowing it to be worn down, I was not allowing it to flow freely, which felt psychologically to me that I was able to flow freely. And that wasn't a part of my grief journey that I was quite ready to embrace yet at that moment. So in January of this year, 2022, it was New Year's Day, and I received a message from someone. And it basically simply said, Happy New Year, gorgeous. And I remember it took my breath away. It made me sit back in my seat for a moment because I hadn't felt or heard or seen anything like that for a couple of years. People tend to walk softly around grieving widows. And so I didn't hear anything like that. And I remember initially thinking, well, oh, okay, well, he's just being friendly, right? But then I realized that it had literally ignited my internal flame almost immediately. That message for me was literally the opening of the door from darkness to light. That moment, as simple as it was, opened my heart again, ignited my soul, and gave me the strength to move forward. And I will always be so eternally grateful to him for doing that. I was so amazed at how incredibly powerful words can be, how they can be powerful in a positive way, and how they can be powerful in a negative way. And I began paying attention. So a couple of weeks into January, I decided that it was time to update my social media, update my website, get some more professional photos done, one that would reflect more of who she was today. So I took a few pictures and I was quickly scanning through them so I could decide what I wanted to use for each platform and so on. And one stood out to me. And that was more of a personal one and a personal pose that I had taken versus a professional one. And I did that specifically for someone. I had never seen this side of myself before. And I remember looking at the photo and thinking, who was she? I didn't even recognize the woman in that photo. I had no idea where she came from. That picture that was taken for someone was never going to be made public. And as I sat and I looked at her, I noticed her wrinkles. I noticed her smile, and I noticed the light in her eyes that had been dark for so long. So I decided to sit with her. I looked at her and I talked to her. I realized that she had come out of one of the worst and darkest storms imaginable. She grew, she fell, and she got back up. But I still didn't recognize the woman in the photo. And I mean, really, I did not really recognize the woman in the photo. It didn't look like how I saw myself at all. And it would take a couple of more weeks before I could even truly embrace the woman in the photo. This picture and I would sit together many times over the next couple of weeks. And I would talk to her. I would literally hold my phone up and look at the photo, and I would talk to her like I was talking to a friend in the same room. And I would thank her for having faith that I could, for always being there, hidden underneath a veil of excruciating pain and grief, to gently hold me up when I just needed her the most, even though I had no idea she was in there holding me up. It was then that I decided to no longer keep the picture private. And I wrote a blog post about the photo, and I put the photo on my website because I felt it was important to share a story of incredible strength and power of a photo and what it can do for you if you let it. I was always very public about my grief process, and I would receive so many messages from people who were going through the same thing or knew of somebody going through the same thing. And many times I would be told over the course of that couple of years of how my words helped people to pivot forward. And that always meant so much to me. Being public wasn't about that for me. It was about healing. It was a way for me to get the noise out of my head, to be able to break away the clutter, to segment things so I could better handle them and work through them. So during my time of resurgence is the only term that I can describe, because it was just like this butterfly had come out of a cocoon and she was going full force ahead with life. I would have friends message me to ask me if I was okay. I was told I was spinning and even manic by some people. But also, again, so many messages from people who found such inspiration in my journey. And thank you for those. When in actuality, I, in that moment, was the strongest that I had ever felt in my life. And I learned during that time that sometimes sometimes when you come out of the darkness, your light can shine a little too bright for people, and that's okay. I also found a love for having my hair down. All of a sudden, I recognized the freedom of it. And I had gone to get it cut a few months ago. I've had the same stylist, Ryan, for years, and I absolutely adore him. And I went to, it was my first haircut after all of this happened. And he was trimming it and he stood behind me and he was flipping my hair and he said, "Why didn't we do this years ago?" And we both laughed about that because it was why. Again, why? Because during my time in the corporate world, I didn't really have long hair a whole lot. I was so busy. I was traveling all the time, and it was just easier to have something short that I could easily maintain on the road. But the incredible feeling of letting it grow and having it down and being free from any constraints is something that felt so incredibly powerful to me. And when you sit with those little things that we take for granted every single day, we can see so many incredible lessons hidden within those. So stop and take a picture of yourself. And I know, some people don't like to do that, but this is only between you and that person. Stop and take a picture of yourself and sit with that photo. Look into your own eyes. Look at your face. Look at your wrinkles. Look at your skin. Look at your hair. Start seeing yourself as the most incredible creature that you are. Talk to that person. Get to know that person. Place a focus on what you absolutely love about your life, not what you hate. Stop thinking in the negative. Stop thinking that you don't have much time or that you haven't been able to achieve some of the things that you've wanted to achieve. When the reality is life is really short, and I learned that in January 2020. If you're still breathing, you do what it is. You do what is on your bucket list. You make it happen. You take risks. You discover by looking at that photo who you are and what you want to accomplish, and make it happen. Step out of your fear box, because that holds so many of us back, and take a risk. What is the worst that can happen? Somebody says no. You move on. Learn to embrace failure just as much as you embrace success. It makes a difference in your mindset. So, again, learn to love parts of yourself and not what you hate. And actually take that word hate completely out of your vocabulary. Don't allow your thinking process to go there at all. It is not a healthy, helpful word. It stops you from growing in your tracks. When you look at your photo, every single wrinkle or scar or inch on your body holds a story, one of incredible strength and perseverance. Honor that. Honor parts of you that have seen so much, and you got back up again. You have gone through dark moments of your own time. You have slayed your own demons, and you got back up. That's huge. You pat yourself on the back. That's pretty incredible. I was hiking with an old friend last week. We've been friends for almost 30 years. And she mentioned to me how she looked at my transformation as magical. And she said that I was actually reversing and aging. And I laughed at that comment because I thought about it and thought, right, okay, so I found a fountain or something. But what I realized is that the reversal was literally self-love. I made a conscious decision in January of this year to love myself first, to get up every single day and be grateful I can, hold gratitude, to be kind to myself, to get rid of that negative voice in my head, to love and honor my mistakes as well as my accomplishments. And I also placed a strong focus on keeping my mind free of any negativity. I know that's impossible with the world that we live in, but work at that. It's a hard process, because the world is spinning at a rate of chaos right now. But by remaining committed to that and to yourself, it can be done. Many people are going through grief right now as well, and not necessarily just losing someone that they love, but they've lost so much the last couple of years. And that is grief. Honor that within yourself and take the steps to move forward and to grow forward and to fall forward every single day. When you fall forward, you can still see where you're going. You stand up, you brush off your knees, and you keep pushing forward. Because unless you continue to put one foot in front of the other, all of that you've been fighting, all of those demons, they win. Keep fighting. Keep slaying your demons. Keep pushing forward. Sit down today and rediscover who you are inside. Take that photo. Stare at that photo and talk to that photo. I know it sounds kind of silly, but I'm telling you, it really works. You can get through this. You just have to keep pushing forward.